And now,
let's talk strategy. Jury duty.
All white juries with zero allies are still a very big problem for Black defendants for a variety of reasons. So, if you want to do your part, get in that jury box.
Don't try to get out of it, just get it done.
Next, implicit bias. Implicit bias, aka unconscious bias, is a bias that we don't know we have.
The reason why we call it implicit is because we don't know that our brain is doing it.
Now, my definition was an oversimplification, and there are many definitions for implicit bias, but it boils down to this. If you see a Black woman walking down the street and you think, she has to be beautiful, that is implicit bias, but it's also a fact. You heard? True. Another example. If you see a young Black man walking down the street with a hoodie and Skittles and assume that he's a thug, that's implicit bias. R.I.P., bro. Dang. Implicit biases can be good or bad. They can be true or false. But the fact is that most of us don't even know that we have implicit biases. Every day, we make decisions based off of our implicit biases, oftentimes without even knowing it. The problem is that when you bring them into the jury box, unchecked, they tend to have negative consequences for Black and brown folk. The good thing is that the law has finally caught up. Well, kind of. Let's move on. Never. Another thing to keep in mind when serving on a jury is
police lie.
Just because they are on the stand and wearing that uniform and have taken an oath doesn't mean that they're telling the truth. Just because they look like your friends and family members doesn't mean that they're being truthful. Police lie sometimes. We know this because we've seen it in the past, like in the Floyd case. The problem with police lying is that there are repercussions like jail and death. But police officers continue to do it because even though they are given tremendous power, they are hardly ever held accountable. Just so you know, there are good police officers out there. Good men and women fighting for justice wherever it is. But sometimes police officers lie.
Let's talk about jury nullification.
Jury nullification is when a jury thinks that a defendant is guilty, but they find her not guilty anyway. Jurors use jury nullification when they think a law is unjust, when a prosecutor has misapplied the law, when the punishment is too harsh, and because of racism. And don't be fooled. Prosecutors know this. That's why you'll see them charge smaller crimes, or what they call lesser offenses. Just keep that in mind. Moving on.
The defendant is innocent until proven guilty.
Innocent until proven guilty sounds like common knowledge, except juries tend to forget to apply it to Black people. In fact, when it comes to Black defendants, it's more guilty until proven innocent. The defendant can show up to trial hungover and with a man of the night. As long as that has nothing to do with the case, she is
innocent until proven guilty.
Facts. Let's talk about the burden of proof. It is the prosecutor's job to prove to the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did what they say she did. The government has to prove each and every element of every single crime. It is their burden and their burden alone. Hold them to that promise. Let's take a break from all this learning.
In the club with my 50-11 girls, posted in the back, I'm a face in my pearl. Brooklyn brims, I sit low. But in here, baby, got that small. Everybody.
Here is a picture of white community leaders washing the feet of Black community leaders in North Carolina as a sign of atonement and humility. Pretty much, they're saying they're sorry. There haven't been reports of white people giving Black people money as a sign of atonement, but When that happens, we will let you know when and where, so y'all could pull up, you heard? Speaking of which, stay tuned for part 2 of this series where we'll be discussing reparations, legislation, and so much more.
Let's talk about police reform.
Acceptable police reform will require police departments to retrain, demilitarize, reallocate funds, restructure or disband police unions. We're going to discuss body cams, and there shouldn't be any internal investigation. How are you going to investigate yourself? You don't. That's the point. Oh. Police retraining will consist of the following: mandatory training on implicit bias, ban chokeholds, mandatory reporting of misconduct, and police have to de-escalate before they use force. And deadly force should only be used in extreme cases. Let's move on to demilitarization. Not too long ago, our police officers looked like this. Now they look like this.
Why?
Y'all remember that fake ass, lame ass, whack ass war on drugs that's responsible for putting millions of black and brown bodies behind bars?
What about it?
Bill Clinton signed this program into law requiring the government to give local police departments military equipment. Why? To fight the war on black, brown, and poor people. I mean the war on drugs. A couple of fun facts about the 1033 program. President Obama restricted the program, but then 45 lifted all of those restrictions. Also important to note, once you get the equipment, you have to use it within a year. And there have been reports of officers using fraud to get and then steal equipment. Demilitarization of our police departments will require us to trash the 1033 program, or at the very least, restrict it. Reallocate funds. We've heard and seen a lot of calls to defund the police, but the truth is that we don't want to defund the police. We want to reallocate the funds for mental health, rehab services, and for community development in black and brown neighborhoods. Moving on. Hulk smash police unions. Police unions were created to protect the police, and they do that ish very well. They've made it incredibly difficult for police departments to fire bad police officers. And they've done this through what's called a collective bargaining agreement. A collective bargaining agreement is a legal contract between the police department and the police union. At a collective bargaining negotiation, the police department and the police union sit down and they decide important things like wages, terms of employment, and other important things. For the most part, police departments are local, so although there are things that we can do to change police unions on the federal level, we're gonna have to make moves on a local level. You feel me? Yes, I do feel you, I do. Speaking of local police departments, let's talk about Bob Kroll. So the Minneapolis Police Department, whose officers murdered George Floyd, they have a police union. Bob Kroll is the president of that police union. On or around June 1st, 2020, Kroll, the president of the police union in Minneapolis, released a letter, and it's clear he's big mad. But Kroll is also very determined. Listen, in his letter, Bob Kroll called the Black Lives Matter movement a terrorist movement. He also said, and I quote, "What is not being told is the violent criminal history of George Floyd." End quote. Finally, Mr. Kroll had this to say, and I quote, "I've worked with the 4 defense attorneys that are representing each of our 4 terminated individuals under criminal investigation, in addition with our labor attorneys to fight for their jobs. They were terminated without due process." End quote. What Kroll is saying is that he thinks the 4 officers were fired without going through the process that's outlined in that collective bargaining agreement that we talked about not too long ago. Now, Kroll has a history of racial issues. Look it up if you're interested. But what's important to remember is that if these officers are found not guilty, they could possibly get their jobs back. Body cameras. Body cameras are a new thing. We're not sure if they work, but officers have to keep them on so that we can figure it out. Let's talk about internal investigations. An organization that is that big, that has a blue wall of silence, and that has so little oversight will never be able to investigate itself. Right. It's like when Fox was calling itself fair and balanced. It's a farce. Moving forward, all internal investigations should be conducted by an outside agency. At the very least, there needs to be more outside oversight. By the way, I've heard of Smurfs, but I've never met a blue person in real life. Okay, let's talk about Colin Kaepernick and the NFL. Quarterbacks are the highest paid players in the league. Even though the NFL is 70% black, there are less than 10 black starting quarterbacks in the NFL. In 2016, Kaepernick sat, then kneeled during the national anthem to protest police brutality and racism. Well, let me tell you, the commissioner of the NFL, Roger Goodell, did not like that at all. He got big mad. Kaepernick continued to protest publicly. Goodell continued to make weird, passive-aggressive comments with coded racist language. Then, in 2018, things escalated when Goodell and team owners signed off on a rule that would require players to stand during the Star-Spangled Banner. Eventually, Kaepernick's contract expired, and mysteriously, no team picked up this elite player. Kaepernick sued the NFL, claiming that he was being blackballed. He settled that case privately for an undisclosed amount. Then, on June 6, 2020, Roger Goodell released this statement.
We, the National Football League, admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier. We, the National Football League, condemn racism and the systematic oppression of black people. We, the National Football League, encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest.
What? This is literally the opposite of what he was saying before. Goodell did not apologize to Kaepernick and in fact didn't mention his name once. Kaepernick remains unemployed.
To this day! To this day! To this day!
Here's what should happen with the Colin Kaepernick situation. Ensure that Colin Kaepernick is employed and work out a settlement for back pay. Also, Roger Goodell needs to apologize to Kaepernick personally and on behalf of the NFL. Let's move on. Actually, let's not. One more thing.
Fire Roger Goodell.
Goodell's contract is scheduled to expire in 2024, after which he will retire, according to him. However, under the terms of his contract and with owner support, Goodell can be fired. Roger Goodell was relentless in his pursuit of Colin Kaepernick, and his sole intent was to silence the black voice, and that's just unacceptable. As of the date of this publication, Roger Goodell has publicly encouraged teams to hire Kaepernick. With that new information in mind, we stand by what we've said. Roger Goodell's apology only came after public opinion on the matter had changed. Otherwise, according to Goodell, the NFL would have continued to, and I quote, move on, end quote. Also important to consider, NFL players have a 3 to 5 year shelf life, and that's not accounting for injury. Of course, some players play longer than that, but Kaepernick just lost 2 years. Anyway, Goodell still hasn't apologized. Maybe him and Jerry Jones can work on an apology letter together. So,
Fire Roger Goodell.
Moving on.
Reform our prison system.
Weed is legal now, but back in the day, it was not. Now we have these cannabis parties where you can taste test and partake, and we even have these cannabis conventions where we can discuss developments in the industry, because it's an industry now. Back in the day, those were called police raids, FBI roundup. Yup. Which reminds me, let's hear a little story. Enter John Boehner. This dude is the former Republican Speaker of the House. He's 70 years old. He is for the legalization of weed, and he has never said no to a tanning bed. In 2011, he wrote to a constituent that he is unalterably opposed to the legalization of marijuana. But now he serves on the board of a publicly traded marijuana company based in NYC. And surprise, he stands to make millions. Maybe, but at least he gets to try. The point I'm trying to make is there are a lot of people who are still in jail for non-violent weed offenses, and it's kind of fucked up. It's fucked up, but we can fix it. Immediately release all non-violent marijuana offenders. Next, solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is fucked up. It is fucked up. It is fucked up. We have got to get rid of it.
It's complete chaos, literally all day, because the level of mental illness is mind-blowing. And it's 23-hour lockdown, 5 days a week, 24-hour lockdown, the other 2 days a week.
In a room the size of a king-size bed.
We got 3 showers a week. A lot of times you're not even going to the shower, so you may do 1 shower a week if they started to end of the tier. You get recreation. They put the handcuffs on you, walk you out with this dog leash to a dog kennel. Literally, it's like a dog kennel. And a lot of times you don't even want to go out there because that's when like the feces war, the shit wars like really go down. They throwing shit and piss.
How do you throw piss?
The most desperate thing I've witnessed being in there is when a guy like 2 cells over set himself on fire. They take him out of the cell, and literally within like a couple days he's back in the cell. And so he set himself on fire again, and then they took him out and we never saw him again. Not like it's one day where it's, you know, where it's chill. Like this is every day it's an incident, every day is chaos, every day is something that makes you question your own humanity, your own sanity. It is the most insane world you can imagine.
Solitary confinement is given to between 80 to 100,000 people a year.
Studies have shown that about half of that number are juveniles, kids under 18.
I thought solitary was for the worst of the worst.
Nope. Solitary confinement is routinely used in our prison system.
Prisoners can be thrown into solitary confinement for a variety of reasons that range from serious to minor. For example, a prisoner can be thrown into solitary confinement for fighting with another inmate or for talking back to a guard. Some prisons have thrown inmates in solitary confinement because they merely suspected that that person was a gang member. Whatever the case, in the new world we're building, solitary confinement should not have a home. Next,
Know your lawmakers. It's inevitable. We have to know our lawmakers on the federal and state level. The good thing is that someone has already done this for you.
if you go to usa.gov/elected-officials, you can find the contact information for all of your elected officials based off your address. It's important for us to get to know our lawmakers. They're the ones who will be appointing our police commissioners and chiefs. Because in case you didn't know, most commissioners and police chiefs are appointed, not elected. Sheriffs are elected though.
And finally, follow my YouTube page.
It's actually channel, but here at Your New Stepmom, the show, our aim is getting better together. And to do that, we explore money, culture, music, and really anything that's interesting. You probably won't end oppression by subscribing to my YouTube channel, but you might. Ultimately, we're just trying to do our part. Thank you for watching, and take care of each other. And now, a message from our creator.
The murders of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and countless others are incredibly tragic, but somehow they've managed to unite us in ways we never thought possible. We've declared that not only are we not the sins of some of our dusty ass fathers, but we have the power to make the change that we want in our lifetimes, but we have to remain vigilant. And we'll discuss how to do that, but know that there are already 1 million organizations with boots on the ground. They have the data and they're doing good work. They've just been waiting for our participation. They've made it so easy that you can make a significant impact from your couch. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You are a hero in this human rights movement. Act like it and never forget it.
Stay tuned for upcoming episodes where we'll discuss very important things like breaking news. White people giving out money, y'all, in Chicago and in Atlanta. They're small denominations, $3 and $20, but it's money. When it gets to $250, I'll let y'all know. If there are any white people looking to donate, I've compiled a list of people accepting donations. Here it is. Surprise, ho! Everyone on the list is me. I'm joking. You don't have to give away money to be effective. But if that's what you want to do, don't let me stop you. Just start where you are with what you have. Until next time.